What's up, IYCA community? I wanted to answer another question today that I got through email from my friend Danny Torres, who is a former professional soccer player and an awesome youth coach down in Costa Rica. Danny had asked me, I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, if there is any new research on the windows of opportunity in the LTAD model, and he said that he's been doing a lot of digging into it. He's been looking at some information from the Canadian Sports for Life, as well as trying to get online to see. And he said he wanted to ask if there was any recent and reliable info on the youth development scientific specifics. For instance, what does the science say is the best age for different physical traits, for training different physical traits? And he said he hasn't seen too many detailed papers on the subject. So, yeah, you haven't seen too many detailed papers, unfortunately, because it's really difficult to come up with a detailed paper on this. So, as you found in Canadian Sport for Life, Balyi has been instrumental in bringing this theoretical model to youth sports and to youth training, and I think it's been great. I think some people have taken it maybe a little bit farther than even what he intended. And I want to explain a little bit about where some of these kind of windows of opportunity theories came from. And Ballieu references it in a lot of his work. He references a paper by Vero et al. I don't know all their names, but it was in a research journal back in 1998 called Biology of Sport, and they were looking at many of the indicators or times when different physical traits were improving more than others. And a lot of these models, where the windows of opportunity, where people are looking for, they want to know, when is the best time to train for speed in kids? When is the best time to train for endurance or strength or flexibility? And I guess in total, I'm going to try to explain to you that there are times when kids are going to show greater improvement in different areas, but that does not necessarily mean that the training is the major factor involved. A lot of people believe that maturation is the big factor involved. So let me back up and explain that a little bit. So what Vero et al. Found in that research study, they were looking at ages of development or ages of improvement for speed, strength, and endurance, aerobic endurance specifically. So what they found was that the times when athletes improved their speed to the greatest extent were, for boys, it was around 7 to 8, and then also from 14 to 15, and for girls, 8 to 9, and then 12 to 13. And those age ranges match almost identically, or they're almost identical for strength. So 7 to 9 and 13 to 16 for boys, and 6 to 8 for girls, and as well as 11 to 12. So basically, if you think about those things, their speed and their strength are going to improve most at kind of the 7 to 9 year old range and the 12 to 15 year old range, let's say. Then endurance is, in boys, it's usually between 11 and 15, and girls 11 to 13. So let's think about that. Does that mean that at that time we're going to necessarily get the best results from training, or does it mean that that is just biologically when they are going to make the most progress? Now, you could easily make an argument, and I think that that's what a lot of people have done, and I somewhat agree with it, that well, if they're going to be making the most progress at these times, that's probably when we should do more training to maximize the effects. So yeah, I guess it does kind of make sense. But let's think about those windows right there. So if you think about the maturation of a child, myelination usually, basically the formation of their nervous systems starts to finish somewhere between 7 and 10 years old. Not completely finished, but they're much more developed. So that kind of coincides with that window where athletes they've seen are getting faster around that age, and they're also getting stronger. Kind of makes sense. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to do speed training or strength training with kids when they're 7 to 9 years old. That's not what that study found. It found that they were improving anyway. They weren't doing strength training necessarily. They were just getting stronger, and they were getting faster. So if you have kids, or if you've trained a lot of kids, you'll notice that at that time, that's when they become a lot more coordinated, and their speed and strength starts to rise naturally. So is it the training, or is it the maturation and development of their nervous system? The second range was for boys, it was around 13 to 15 or 16, and for girls it was 11 to 13. Well, think about what else happens around that time. Puberty. Now, some people will say, well, that's the time of peak height velocity, so that's the most sensitive time. That's when we should be training. I can agree with that. I can also say that during puberty, there's a lot of hormones that are flowing through kids' bodies, and they are able to grow muscularly. Their ability to generate energy through the aerobic and anaerobic pathways is starting to develop, because they're finally getting the chemistry to make that happen. Like, there's all sorts of things happening, and kids are going to get stronger, and kids are going to get faster. If you've ever worked in a high school weight room, for example, or middle school, and you start training kids who are 13 to 15 years old, you can pretty much do anything and say your program works, because kids are going to get stronger at that time. They're going to get more powerful, and they're going to get faster, because they're getting stronger, longer, and more powerful. So are they more sensitive to training at that time? I'm not sure if they're more sensitive to training, or if that's just when they're going to grow, they're going to get stronger, they're going to get bigger, and they're going to get faster. Should we take advantage of those times? I think so, but the idea that they are more sensitive to training at that point has not really been proven, and that's why you're having a hard time finding that information, Danny, because it would be really difficult to take a group of kids who are 7 to 9 or 11 to 14 years old and put them into two groups and say, we're going to train these kids and we're not going to train these kids, and we're going to see if they're more sensitive, or if we're going to train them in different ways, in different volumes, to determine what works best. It would be very difficult for us to get that past ethics committees, because they're kids. I think it could be done, and I think it will be done eventually. But right now, we don't know the real reason for those, when we don't know if they're actually more adaptable at that age, and or if to the training, or if they're just going to get bigger, stronger, and faster because of maturation. I will say that the theory of long-term athlete development, I agree with wholeheartedly. I definitely believe that that things should be done in a sequence, starting with more nervous system type activities. So working on motor skills early on and slowly ramping it up into some speed, agility, body weight exercises, and then teaching them how to train when they're like 14 and up, more formal training. But kids and anybody can adapt to anything at any time. So don't worry too much about it. Train kids the right way. Use the principles that we've laid out in all of our courses for good training. Don't overtrain them. Keep it fun and interesting. Be a good coach. Look for a willingness and interest to train, and you'll know when they're ready for things because they'll want to do it. Try not to push kids into things that you know that they absolutely don't want to do. Even if you think that maybe they should be doing something, if they're not expressing an interest in it, you're going to have to find a way to kind of get in their head and get them to want to do it. So this is my long answer to your short question, Danny. I hope it helped. There's a lot of gray area here. I would say, train your kids all the time. Don't just wait for a window of opportunity and wait for peak height velocity or for puberty. Train them well, follow the systems that we've put in place for long-term athlete development, and I believe kids are going to have great experiences and are going to be better athletes and enjoy sports to a much greater degree than if we don't do things in that kind of sequential fashion. So I hope that helps. Let me know what you think and if you have any questions about that.